everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on impact investment. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Rob and Mr. Dan. Mr. Rob, what you want to discuss about impact investment? Specifically, I know you are expert in modern technology, so how we can innovate new kind of technology and bring in more investment in this ecosystem.
Right. Well, first, talking about what impact investing is. Impact investing is investing that is expected to have a return on the investment. In other words, it's supposed to be profitable, but it's focused on improving the lives of the people around you or on the planet. It's investing in ecosystems. It's investing in um, making life better, easier, more sustainable in a number of whatever different ways. The folks that I'm aware of that are aggressive in this are folks like Bill Gates, who probably sets the gold standard with regard to impact investing. Massive fund that he administers and created. And for the most part, he's focused it on a variety of things, everything from weather modification research to toilets. Is one of his recent announcements was a new form with Samsung was a new form of combusting toilets that where the waste is combusted, the volume is reduced. And while we've had combusting toilets in the past, they're used in some recreational vehicles, for instance. They're very inefficient in terms of energy, and so the Samsung Gates effort is to address that energy inefficiency and create combusting toilets that are much more energy efficient. So you're getting rid of the waste, and you're also saving on energy use. And with combusting toilets, you don't necessarily need to be connected to a sewer system or some other method of getting rid of the waste, because what your waste is ashes, and you can throw that in the trash. So for an area that doesn't want to incur the cost of a full-on sewage system or put in septic tanks, which can be problematic if anybody's ever managed a septic tank, it's nothing I ever wish to do again. This is a way to deal with the problem on a toilet per toilet basis, and while you'll still need some way to get rid of the white and gray water, the liquids that you're using for washing, cleaning, and urinating. This at least gets rid of the hard waste, and when you're not introducing hard waste and paper into a septic system, they can last pretty much indefinitely. So it lowers the overall cost of building out an area. And when we're talking about times when we're likely to have massive numbers of refugees, whether we're talking about climate refugees or the refugees out of the Gaza Strip right now, about 1.5 million people are going to have to be set up and relocated, which is problematic. Then using something like a combusting toilet would make sense, because it means you don't have to handle the waste. And also we've got issues with regard to military base and otherwise have to use that. That's one example of this kind of investment. Cisco does a fairly aggressive job with regard to investing in this fashion. Every place where they've got a headquarters building, they invest in building out low-cost housing and focus on trying to relieve the homeless. Now, the difference between Gates' approach and Cisco's approach is Cisco's approach isn't always profitable. It has significant social impact, but the profit effort is reduced. On the other hand, their efforts with regard to bringing technology to countries, that particular effort is a profitable effort and has much the same impact in terms of being able to bring technology to areas that don't have it, allow them to have telecommunication services where they didn't have them before. That is a profitable effort. And then there have been several efforts to do things like provide wells in Africa that are sustainable. The problem in Africa was that people didn't understand how to protect the water sources, and so they would dig wells. Those wells would become contaminated. That contamination would cause broad sickness, and you'd have this cycle, and that sickness would then contaminate more water sources, and it would continue on. Cisco went in and showed people how to create better wells using relatively low-tech methods, because maintaining technology in a low-tech area can be problematic. And it became sustainable. And then the companies that did it, that now supply these services, are marginally profitable. And they did the same thing with neonatal monitors, where it was discovered that in emerging economies, they really couldn't afford neonatal monitors on babies, and it was resulting in excessive child death. They worked with another company to create neonatal monitors that were under $10 each, and worked adequately. And so you could drop them into a low tech area. The cost wasn't thousands of dollars; it was dollars. And the end result is you could supply enough neonatal monitors to handle the load, and it was within the financial resources of the region. And then the company that's providing that particular service is making those things profitably, so they're still making money. And so you get a certain level of ability to sustain the resources with an impact investment. And again, the effort here is to not only do good with the investment, but to sustain the investment. In other words, provide a return so that money then can be used to create other impact investments and create an even bigger impact. It's arguably a better way. Google was one of the first companies that I saw step up with this concept of philanthropy could be profitable. And that really kind of goes to the heart of an impact investment, is figuring out a way to both do good and to make money. Because if you're just spending money to solve a problem and it's not profitable, that becomes a cost center, and people like to eliminate cost centers, particularly during hard times. And during hard times is when you most need investment into services. And if the investment is not providing a return, then those services are going to be discontinued as budgets get tighter and governments and companies start making trade-offs between keeping the lights on and the doors open and doing these other things. But if it's making money, then fixing that as a problem is not a priority. It's generating revenue, and so therefore you leave that alone, and it can sustain itself. And in some cases, it can spread that investment from one thing to another, and generate a better outcome overall with regard to that impact. So that's kind of my opening comments. I'll pass it over to Dan to continue this on.
Thanks again, Rob. Very concise take on the topic as usual. I don't know if I was next or David, but good to see David here as well. He's another great voice on topics. But yeah, I mean, maybe they should call it positive impact investing. I mean, because that's usually what you're trying to do, is accomplish like a beneficial social goal, which we definitely need more of. I think we've had an economy for too long which was run under traditional corporate fiduciary rules, where you were obligated to create an ever greater dividend return to the shareholders, and if you weren't doing that, you were violating your fiduciary duty. But we can't have unlimited growth in a limited ecosystem or environment, which is why we're in a condition of overshoot. What some people have pointed out, that we're using about 4 times the resources of planets. So we would need about 4 planets, in other words, to sustain this level of consumption and extraction that's going on. So it's a great time to become an impact investor and think about environmental, social goals when you do your economic activity. The word eco is actually the Latin root word for home, or oikos. So ecology, economy, they're very tied together. It's really talking about the integrity and the resilience of your home. So what could be more important than impact investing, tying together the economy and the ecology? I would say the best investment you can make is in your own health and education initially, because if you lose that, you've kind of lost the whole context of anything you do. Beyond that, you've got your neighborhood, your community, your friends, your family. Microfinance has been a great tool for keeping the money on Main Street. I've used this term before: keep the money on Main Street, not on Wall Street. If the money flows around the community, it's going to do more good as it circulates. I have a friend in Norway who is helping out someone in Africa. It's kind of an interesting story. They wanted to sell orange slices on the street from a little food cart, but no one wants like a warm orange slice. So he helped the guy buy a refrigerator. And man, once you get some cold orange slices for sale, that is something that you can really get a business going with that. So something as simple as just helping someone of limited means refrigerate some orange slices to sell in their neighborhood. That's a kind of impact investing that didn't take Bill Gates level money. But Rob, that's interesting you mentioned about Bill Gates and his future toilet initiative, because we really are using immense amounts of drinkable, usable water just to move waste around. And it's actually not even waste. It's got a great fertilizer potential reuse resource. So yeah, that's sometimes there's just little things that have been done, and no one asks why they were done this way, but it's been for so long it's been done that way that no one bothers to question it or think of a better way. It's kind of like the old thing about there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns. It's like, there's always more that you don't know than you do know, but there's things that you don't even know that you don't know. So these are things that a smart investor will be aware of, the information universe around them and how that is going to impact their investing. Now, as far as other monetary vehicles, there's the Public Benefit Corporation, which is it's like I said, it's not just focused on fiduciary responsibility to generate a return to the investors, but it's also got a dual mission: financial return and doing good, creating a public benefit. So those are now available in, I think, practically every state has some form of corporation or some form of entity you can start called a C Corp or a public benefit corp. Those are worth looking into. And now the other thing about impact investing is you want to be able to measure the positive impact that you're creating. And I'd say there's a lot of room to develop tools for doing that. There's the famous Heilmeyer Catechism that a DARPA chief developed in the 70s, which is about 8 questions. And he would say, if you could answer all these 8 questions, your grant or your project is probably going to get approved and be a success. And one of the questions is, how is it done now, and how will your idea be different, and how will you measure the success of your different way of doing things? So that is something I would urge people interested in impact investing to look into those measurement tools for doing that. I guess those are some of my opening thoughts. I want to hear from David, have him jump in on the topic there. So I'll pass the mic over. Thanks again.
Rob, Dan, thank you both so much. It's good being here. Sorry, my call before this went a few minutes long. Impact investments has many different places, and I love that the examples that Rob used is showing how they equate into products and things too. I kind of break impact investment down into categories. I recently, because of all the world situation and environment, went and rebalanced some of my investment, and particularly evaluated and moved a lot of my mutual funds. And as I was talking with my financial advisor, she was telling me, David, here are some new funds that are strictly targeting impact investments. And here's the differences. So as a personal investor, I can look at ways of making impact investments, either directly into a project, directly into a company, or directly into mutual funds that support what I believe in and have the impacts. It was interesting with going through with her on this. They now have probably 50 different categories of impact investments and mutual funds that you can kind of pick and choose. Almost what are the things that are your care abouts and match them. But then another place you see impact investments going quite a bit is when you look at the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance type of investments of corporations. And those are a different form of impact investment because those are directed from the corporate level. And you see yet still another one called SIR investments, which is socially responsible investments going through it. And one of the metrics that I found really interesting is there's a group called the Global Impact Investing Network. And they have reported that more than 88% of the impact investments, of the impact investors are reporting that their investments meet or exceed their expectation. That is a unbelievably high percentage. I doubt any, if I were to look across investors in the Fortune 100, I doubt the percentage would be that high in the Fortune 100 of investors who are happy with their investments. So you have that category in there. And another interesting statistic on impact investment is that the medium impact fund reports a 6.4% return compared to a 7.4% return from non-impact funds. So if I just try to compare apples to apples, the impact funds do generate about a point lower return, but yet you have the ability to help control them where your interest, your consciousness, your care abouts reside. So some really interesting numbers looking underneath the cover on how those can be used and what they're doing. There is an attempt to try to establish standards in this area because there is not a way to really look at a consistent set of metrics and a consistent set of KPIs built around this type of impact investments. And there is a group that is trying to put in place a corporate social responsibility metric to begin to use to judge these incorporations. And I'm sure that will carry over into looking at individual investments as well and some of the funds and things like we've talked about already. The other thing to think, though, is that if I begin to look at yet the smaller type of impact investments, and we've talked about these in many different shows in the past, is there's the ability to do microloans, microfinances, to go and look at ways to, particularly in impoverished communities and developing nations and things, to begin to make even small direct loans to help the entrepreneurs, to help the citizens, to help the small communities with financing different things. That is yet another type of impact investment that really is not tracked well. And the fact that you really don't know the impact. Over the last probably 15 years, I have made some microloans through some of the groups I'm associated with to help start entrepreneurship in Africa by providing things such as solar panels to generate electricity that they could run, for example, sewing machines with, because their electricity over there is really non-dependable. And in many of those villages, you only have electricity for an hour or two a day, which is not a good way to run a business that requires electricity for sewing machines, for example. And so you have impact of investment even down at that level. So the topic of impact investment goes from government organizations, large non-government organizations like World Bank and United Nations, IDB, and others like that, to corporations, to individuals, to individual persons working one-on-one with other people to do impact investments. So, Sharif, you've chosen a topic today that is very broad and can have a considerable impact on each of those scales. Even the smallest investments can have considerable impacts, like the ones where we provided power and sewing machines to start entrepreneurship in parts of Africa where it just did not exist before. So Sharif, thank you for letting me have this first comment.
Thank you. Mr. Rob Enderle, you are a great analyst and especially you have a very good strategy. So what type of strategy emerging economy can develop for bringing more impact investment in their countries?
You mean attracting more impact investment or actually making more impact investment? Or both?
Attracting.
Well, so
Both, yeah.
let me deal with both because I was all set to talk about how to do it right. So the key thing about doing any form of investing is building up a core competence. This is not something you do casually. Where a lot of companies make mistakes is when looking at something like this, they figure, well, Bill's not doing anything and he hasn't been all that productive in his old role, so let's move him over to this and make him a team leader. And then let's pull a bunch of other people underneath him that also aren't performing very well in their existing jobs. And then we wonder why the whole thing just collapses and fails within a few months. You have to build up a core competence. That does at least initially mean hiring people that have done impact investing from outside the company. They can train others, and they can certainly look for resources inside the company. But until you have a core competence, you don't know what you're doing. And doing anything where you don't know what you're doing is very expensive. So it's really critical that you build up a core competence and then build out a team that can do this, or partner with somebody that can do it for you. There are firms that specialize in different types of investment, and you can hire them to handle that particular aspect for you if that's the case. But I think most companies would like to do this inside. That means building the competence inside that allow you to do this. Now, in terms of attracting impact investment, well, it's about doing good and providing a return. And like any investment, you have to market you market the return and the benefit. Though with impact investing, you can't just say, okay, we'll be, as David pointed out, we'll be 1 point less than whatever other investment you're going to have, and good luck getting people to sign up. So you have to not only market the return, but market the benefit. And the benefit really needs to be something the company can wrap its head around, or the investor can wrap its head around. So, for instance, if a company is really focused on improving life in Finland, they're probably not going to be all that interested in investing in Bangladesh, because they're focused on Finland, unless what's going on in Bangladesh, what's being developed, what's being done in Bangladesh has an impact on what they're doing in Finland, a new technology, a different way to approach the problem. I mentioned combusting toilets before, so combusting toilets could have a positive impact almost any country. And so creating that technology inside and then allowing it to migrate out. In other words, being a licensing entity to license out, may attract those investors that are focused on their own geography if it's marketed to them as a way to fix problems they've been struggling with in that geography. So it's a case of really kind of knowing your market. It's like selling anything else. You have to know the customer, and the firms and individuals that are doing impact investing are focused on doing good, but often in doing good where they live, or doing good in an area they're interested in, like Africa or wherever. And so what in that case, it's not saying, well, invest in us because we're doing good here. Well, that's great, but they're kind of focused on this other area. It's more the case of invest in us, and this technology we're developing can help you where you want to make a difference. That's something they might get behind and be much more attractive, as well as providing that return on investment that they're looking for to sustain their overall effort. So it's a case of developing the underlying concepts of what is it that you're doing or can do in your own country that would have efficacy in other countries to solve problems there that investors in those countries might be interested in, and then market to those investors. It means discovering who those investors are. It means creating packages that are attractive to those investors. It means going to conferences that attract this kind of investor and pitching to them, and initially probably just listening. One of the big mistakes I think entities do when they're trying to attract investors is they jump in with both feet and they start selling, and that's not a smart way to approach it. The best way to approach is initially learn about the audience, figure out what motivates them, what is it that causes them to write a check, Then when you make the pitch, when you create your offer, it's going to be attractive to those investors, and those investors may take the offer. And if you do it the other way first, you may alienate those investors. And now you've got a negative initial concept, initial representation that you have to overcome. Once an investor has a negative view of you, it takes a lot to overcome it. We do most of the analysis and stuff like this with regard to brands. But the one big brand effort that I was involved with, which was the IBM brand effort when they had to recover the brand in the 80s and 90s, was it cost about $100 million to recover the IBM brand once it was torched. Now it just shows that how costly it is. That's just to recover to get back to even, and then build the brand after that, and get back to $1 billion brand. So you don't want to damage your brand when you're going in. So it means listening, understanding, and making sure that your first pitch is a good pitch, and it addresses the concerns the individuals have and provides them with something they might be interested in. They might not sign up, but if you can intrigue them, they haven't formed a negative impression of you, and you don't have something to overcome the next time you visit. And if you were interesting and had something that was designed to appeal to them, they might want to just hear from you. Even if they don't sign a check, they might want to hear from you again to see if you're any closer, if you've done something that's even more interesting. So it's all about knowing your audience up front, knowing what drives them, knowing what causes them to sign on the dotted line, and then crafting your offer based on that knowledge. Not running in and saying, hey, send us money, because that just won't work. A bunch of people with their hands out, trust me, those guys see that all the time, and they're really good at saying no. And you want to get past the no and get to at least a maybe, get to that level of consideration, so they might consider writing the check, and then you're good. You can visit them all the time, and as long as it's always a maybe, you're not alienating the relationship. But if you're walking in and you're getting no's, then you got a problem, because they're just going to say you're a waste of our time, and we don't want to see you again. And then when you finally have something that might be interesting, they'll just say no, because it's like the old Philosopher's Stone story. If they've said no enough times, that's their automatic response. Have you ever heard the Philosopher's Stone story? It's where guys there's a Philosopher's Stone that turns things into gold, and it's a warm stone, and it's on a beach covered with stones, and the guy's spending year after year lifting the stones, and he's throwing them in the ocean, and finally he finds the Philosopher's Stone, but he reflexively throws it in the ocean, because that's what he's been doing for years and years. And that's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid building a habit pattern where investors just automatically say no because you don't have anything that interests them. And that means really understanding the investors before you build the package, and before you go out and begin selling. So that's the critical aspect. I will now pass on to Dan.
I hadn't heard that Philosopher's Stone story. I thought it was maybe going to have to do with the stone soup story, which that's where that's a clever story too. It's where a man meets a miserly old woman, and she doesn't have anything to eat, and he doesn't have anything to eat, and he says, "Oh, but I have a stone that you can make soup out of." And he puts the stone in the hot water, starts stirring it around, and he said, "Oh, this stone soup is going to be a little thin, but if maybe we had a little bit of barley to throw in there, it would really make it good." And anyway, the old woman says, "Well, I might have a handful of barley." And so it goes on and on. Some carrots would make it good. And pretty soon they've got this full-blown broth meal. and the woman's, while they're enjoying the dinner, she's like, "I imagine it all came from a stone." Which is kind of like the impact investing. That's a great parable for the idea of impact investing is get people involved at the local level. People really will support something that they help create, and especially if it's fun or interesting. So I think we haven't at the community level, we haven't involved our churches enough. I think churches really are supposed to be stewards of this divine creation, but I think they've fallen short on that role, and I think they could be incentivized to actually step up a little better than they have. There was a guy who ran a church in Costa Mesa that used to have meals for the houseless, and he also started a community garden in his church parking lot. He built these out of pallets, the forklift pallets. Those are pretty much available for free behind buildings. I don't know if they're always free. You want to be careful about which ones you recycle, but a lot of them are free. And you could build these. What this pastor did was he put them on wheels, and he supplied water, and people could come and grow food in these mobile pallet box gardens in his church parking lot. I don't know. I haven't checked in on the outcome of that, but it was going pretty good at the time. There's always like a not in my backyard phenomenon. They call it NIMBY. People think, oh, you're attracting people we don't want to see, and it's noisy and scary, and there's risk involved. But these are all problems that have to be dealt with, hopefully amicably in the insurance and in the courts and the other avenues. But speaking of big legal system changes for impacting the disadvantaged, I know our governor here in California just signed a bunch of laws that are going to make it very easy to do what are called ADUs, which are kind of like tiny houses. ADU stands for auxiliary dwelling unit. And because there are so many people sleeping on sidewalks and tents, and the cities in lots of the big cities are getting untenable because you've just got these people that can't afford housing that are just camping out in front of stores and blocking the sidewalk and making a mess because they don't have facilities that people should have. So, we really need to treat the least of these like Jesus said, if you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me. And that should be kind of the heart and soul of human rights and religion. And speaking of the religious angle, I'm kind of a what you would call a biocosmist. I think we are here on a mission to nurture life and steward life and expand life off the planet. And this is not really taught or talked about enough, but I think Jesus was the first transhumanist. If you want to look at it, he was talking about eternal life and making this earth, making the earth a kingdom of God. Heaven is all around you, and people don't see it. So we really shouldn't be waiting around for God's going to come back and fix everything. No, the real story is these are the eyes and hands and my brains of God. We're here to steward this creation and then improve it and enliven it and fix it. And instead, what are we doing? We're mostly making gadgets and extractive consumerist things out of it. And, we're causing a mass extinction, several mass extinctions every day because of our habits. So, yeah, I think impact investing is sometimes in those places that you don't think of. Your church, your school, your library. Your library can loan out tools like they loan out books. If you need to dig a hole, you could check out a shovel from your library. A lot of libraries are doing this. And the nice thing about tools is that they are a multiplier of human talent. Normally, the formula for man's material well-being is labor plus resources times tools. So when you add a tool to the labor and the resource equation, it's a multiplier. You start getting exponential returns, which is what investors like. They don't like linear returns. They like arithmetic exponential curve returns, and those are possible because right now, the tools and technology curve we're riding is an exponential curve. I mean, look at the past 5 decades. Microprocessors became 1 million times cheaper and 1 million times more powerful. And the same is probably going to happen with things like machine learning and quantum computing, topics which WTEF forum here talks about. So yeah, impact investing, it's wide open, and there's all kinds of opportunities being missed, and there's all kinds of opportunities for being more agile and more resilient. So don't ignore them. They're out there, and stay tuned. So David, take it away.
Sharif, anything particularly you want us to focus on?
Yeah, we do focus on the impact investment strategy, how we can attract more impact investment and how we can do impact investment. Example in Bangladesh.
That one's pretty straightforward. You begin to see impact investment, like we said earlier, across so many different areas. that you have it. So part of the first strategy in an impact investment is really going back and, as Rob said earlier, begin to look at what's important to you. Rob and I use different terms to describe this. I use the term careabouts and careabouts analysis because a care about can be a tangible or an intangible. And that is one of the first things you do when you look at impact investment from an individual standpoint. Corporations need to look at a strategy for impact investment differently because it has to be built across the goals that the corporation is working under. For example, the 17 goals, or if I add Dan's goal, the 18 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are some of the strategies that corporations have to do as they begin to look at impact investment. The other thing that you begin to see is you can look at it from a market standpoint. So many places where a strategy is built in place for impact investment can be around things like healthcare, education, energy, especially different types of clean and renewable energy. It can be in agriculture. And those are some of the different ones where you can begin to easily get into them and begin to see some of your impact. Another interesting way is to a strategy for particularly individuals and families is to begin to dedicate part of your portfolio to impact investing. And this is one that I know my financial advisor, we were talking about that, is how to do that, what type of the way to do it in corporations, doing funds, to do as direct investments like I mentioned I have done before through some of my religious views. Also, a strategy for impact investment is you need to do due diligence and make sure that the impact area you're investing in meets your standards. And you have to really begin to understand that you have to look across three really broad categories in there. And it's the people. Is there a commitment to the people to do what is? Is it a sustainability, a commitment to climate and environmental sustainability? Or is it a principle of governance? Are they committed to corporate ethics, to societal benefits, and some of the other?
I think David's got the Austin internet freeze up issue there.
As opposed to looking at from an investment standpoint, even though it is an investment, is how you secure your own personal finances. You know, if I'm going to go and buy a new home, do I look at mortgages that are impact investment type of mortgages, loans? Do they discriminate? Do they do other elements like that? As I'm looking at, am I buying green homes? Am I going in communities where they subscribe to a circular economy? Am I doing all those other things? So your question, Sharif, is a very, well, even though we dropped Sharif, a very broad question in that there's so many different elements of a impact investment strategy, and each one have their own unique nuances that you have to take into account as you're looking at the impact investments. And finally on this one, the portfolio approach that we tend to take in many of our corporations and many of our other funds, many of our personal finances, is actually a good one for impact investment too. I worry when I see an investor making all their investments in one place in this area, because oftentimes it's better to spread out, particularly geographically diversely spread out, than to invest in one area. But you, of course, have to follow your own beliefs, your own feelings, and your own consciousness with doing that. But Rob, I think that's probably my answers to his question. Let me throw it over to you.
Hey, I've got a quick question for you, David, if I can jump in. What do you think of the micropayment possibility? Like right now, 1% of the GDP goes to credit card processing fees. And if we
Right.
transition to where people could just, anyone with a cell phone can pay anyone else with a cell phone with like zero fees, what kind of impact do you think that will have on the investment universe?
I don't think that would last long, because what you see with micropayments, even using like Venmo and PayPal and stuff like that, you still see challenges with collection. You still see challenges with maintaining the ability to meet the requirements for security, to meet the requirements for certification. You know, if I am transferring money, I have to meet the government regulations on that. And if I'm just doing a peer-to-peer, there has to be some point where those regulations begin to impact that. You know, an electronic transfer does not have the same rules as a currency transfer of moving dollars or coins with it. And so we see that all the way around. So those are the types of things I think you have to consider. Dan, I'm a person who I still like to make cash payments, particularly to small businesses, so that they do not have to incur the transaction cost of some of the credit cards. Even though I will admit I make fewer and fewer cash payments and I write fewer and fewer checks. Everything's electronic now. So I see that going. But the micro loans, I think, are another issue, though. I feel fairly comfortable making some micro loans to people, and my repayment on those micro loans is a fairly high percentage, not perfect, but pretty high. And I see the help. It's help I can see personally and immediately. And as an impact investment, those are ones that I kind of feel good about. Is it having a global impact? No, but I can see the local impacts tremendously. And those are kind of like micropayments in a way. So I hope that answered your question.
Good answer. Yeah, so it's not going to displace the credit card part of the GDP anytime soon, right, Rob?
Well, no, that recognize that those fees, part of the cost of those fees is the cost that go in. Some of the profit, a lot of the profit, but some of the cost of those fees are going into eliminating fraud, assuring the accuracy of the transaction. You have an infrastructure that has to be in place that handles the currency transfers and tracks them. And you can use blockchain, but even blockchain has an ecosystem that has to be supported by something. And so the end result is I'm not sure you can get away from all the fees as long as the transactions are digital. And the fraud stuff is something you do want an investment in, because we have the banks incur billions of dollars of fraud losses every year, and that's not something that any of us individually are prepared to take on at this moment. Until we can get to a point where we can get more assurance that fraud can be eliminated, and blockchain did try but blockchain, you have recourse, but again, you have to be able to afford the recourse if you've been defrauded. I mean, it's with blockchain, it's supposed to work where one person assures they've got the goods and the other person assures they've got the funds, and then off you go and the transaction occurs. But we've had fraud with blockchain. So tracking the transaction does allow for recourse, but again, you incur the cost of that. The recovery is still up to you. So part of what you're relying on a bank to do in these cases is to provide that recourse. The nice thing about a credit card, if it goes through and you're defrauded, unlike a ATM card, the bank will eat the the cost and maybe recover it. And my own experience, I bought an SUV one time that I hadn't intended to buy. Somebody split the cost of the SUV and my wife and my credit cards. The bank covered it. But and I even identified where it probably occurred out of a Hertz office, because the only place where both of our credit cards were present. The bank could have cared less. And the interesting thing is the outfit that was selling the truck was right next door to the outfit that validated the transaction, which kind of suggested there might have been a little bit of collaboration going on between the two entities. But again, the bank didn't seem to care. They just wrote it off and off they went. Something I couldn't have afforded to do. So they say, well, somebody bought a truck on my credit card. I'm out 20 grand. Who cares? I cared. So not having to take that hit was also important. The microloans has been a huge boon to building on what David said. Microloans have been a huge boon to areas that really lack financial support. Interest rates tend to be reasonably good, and the loss rate is manageable. But do recognize that you absorb the loss rate. I mean, that offsets your benefits, and so you do have to be a little bit prudent, as always, with regard to microloans. But people have done them, have reported that they're getting a return. I don't know if the return is as good as something else again, but again, you're doing good. So it's like philanthropy, but instead of just sending money out, you get some money back, which goes back to that old Google model. If you can do philanthropy and make money doing it, it's going to be better than doing philanthropy and not making money doing it, because that allows you to maintain your philanthropic funds and allow you to do more good. It's this idea of just doing philanthropy for its own sake. One is, I don't believe it's actually real. In most cases, philanthropy for its own sake is at least when I've looked into it, has been more of a tax dodge than philanthropic effort. But if you're doing it as part of an investment strategy and getting a return, then you're motivated to do it for the right reasons, not doing it for the wrong reasons. And philanthropy done for tax relief, as we've seen from our ex-president, can result in a lot of things that are incredibly questionable in terms of philanthropic organizations that don't do anything like they were supposed to do, and are only providing some type of benefit for the folks that are providing the funds. So avoiding the motivation for an illicit philanthropic effort is also, I think, part of what intelligent investing allows. You're not looking for a huge return, but you are looking for a reasonable return, and the end result is you're able then to focus on the good the philanthropic effort does, coupled with its return, as opposed to just the return. And as I pointed out, there are very few people, I think, that do these things just for the good. There are people out there that do behave that way. I don't believe it's a sustainable effort. It very seldom is generational in nature. When the funds pass on to the next generation, they tend to discontinue the underlying effort and not continue it because it's not profitable. But if you can create a philanthropic effort that provides a return, then the heirs are at least motivated to keep it in place and maintain that return, even if they may not feel as philanthropic as their parents or grandparents did. So I just think it's a better way to provide philanthropy is to look at a return on the effort, and don't get greedy. Recognize that there's going to be a little bit of cost associated with doing good, but the real benefit is doing good and maintaining your philanthropic pool. So that's kind of my contribution for this round. And where did our master go?
I guess there was some business in Dhaka, Bangladesh there, but David, I love that idea of spending cash among local merchants, because they're probably going to spend it among another local merchant, and instead of making a credit card fee every time you want something in town, and that wealth energy gets siphoned away to a bank somewhere that's not in town. I think some cities even have like little local city coins that are only good at local businesses. That would be another way to make sure that the money stays on Main Street. And that is impact investing, right? Just buying locally with cash. That's the kind of impact investing anyone can do. heck, shopping at your local farmers market. Most cities have farmers markets every week, and those are people that are directly circulating the money around your neighborhood community, usually. But so that was a great suggestion there. And Rob, you put fireproofing on your house. That's kind of an impact investment because your house won't be burning down, and you won't be having the the costs associated with that. So yeah, helping your community to become more prepared, safer, more resilient. That's another kind of impact investing. There's another one I love that's literally dirt cheap. Anyone can do, and that's raising earthworms. All you need is a plot of land and some water, and then some compostable foodstuffs, and it's the equivalent, really, of raising cattle when you look at the price per pound of earthworms. And they don't make noise. They don't wake up your neighbors. They do. They are escape artists. So I will say that if you're gonna raise earthworms, you have to deal with their tendency to want to escape their habitats. But
I don't know. I've seen the movie Tremors. I think I'm going to stay away.
Yeah, that's the downside.
I agree.
Or how about Dune? Dune meets Tremors. No, but
yeah, but you can ride those worms.
Yeah, right.
If you ride one of those things into Los Angeles, that I do.
Now that's a public transportation solution that a lot of people could get on board.
Literally.
Yeah. And this is I would say the power of art and fun and theater and games and entertaining. That's a neglected aspect of impact investing. I've said before, over and over, is that people won't stick with something unless it's fun. So making impact investing fun is a good thing, and you can pretty much gamify anything. There's lots of ways to add a game component to things. Just set up a leaderboard. Who's doing the best on the top 10 this week at a certain activity. That's a very simple way of gamifying something, because money is not the only way to incentivize people to do things. It's one way, but there are people will do things for bragging rights that they would never do for money sometimes.
Well, that brings up kind of an idea. We have the capability of doing large scale simulations now, and we've seen now a number of events: 9/11, the attack of Russia on Ukraine, Hamas recently in Israel. If you can create simulations of what the results of these attacks would be. So with 9/11, it pretty much wiped out everybody that did the attack. It was certainly not a goal of the attackers. Russia going after Ukraine probably is going to end with the death of Putin and crippling of Russia. And this Hamas thing is going to wipe out Gaza. I doubt when they're done, there's going to be anything left of the Gaza Strip. And if you can show that outcome, you may be able to prevent the act. So if you're better able to, and this is something you can do for and I've seen them on YouTube. They create this simulation. This is what would happen. Here's an analysis of prior wars and prior conflicts. These are the outcomes. So if this kind of thing were to happen, a terrorist organization was to attack the U.S. and destroy a significant piece of the infrastructure. If Hamas were to go in and kill a lot of people in Israel, if Russia is to attack Ukraine, would it stand? Do they have the resources and capabilities to do it? Now, the Russia thing, it's a little iffy because I don't think anybody was aware of how bad their military truly was, which needed to be factored into the simulation. But if you can constantly showcase, this is what people are considering. These are the likely outcomes of what it is they're thinking of doing. You might be able to convince people not to do these stupid things so that they don't make the mistake in the first place, and we avoid the loss of life and the extreme outcome. The tools to create simulations are getting ever less expensive, and you can make them entertaining. You can wrap a story around them so that they're entertaining to watch. We've had war movies going back to forever since we've had the beginning of movies, but this would be really talking about war movies based on future conflicts and showing what the unintended consequences might be, and maybe convince folks that would be the case. It really troubles me now, for instance, to see Putin arguing As people in the U.S. have argued in the past that a nuclear war is winnable. That's problematic because it really depends. No matter how you look at it, it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory where you're probably going to wish you hadn't entered into the conflict in the first place because of the collateral damage that's done. But if you don't convince the decision makers of this, then somebody says, well, let's find out. And that's not how you want to discover that the collateral damage is more than you can afford. So being able to create large scale simulations and then using them as a construct to create entertainment might be a way to convince people that these are paths you don't want to take because the outcomes are outcomes you absolutely don't want. So it's an interesting thought about how you might use technology in a fashion that could be profitable because the movies are entertaining, but focus them on things that governments are thinking of doing that could end very badly, like China attacking Taiwan. That's one of the short range things that happens. And really, I don't see any outcome where China comes out of that whole or even marginally capable. There's just too much heavy ordnance in that area to allow China to emerge from a Taiwan attack intact and not badly crippled. But China, if China doesn't believe that, they want Taiwan and they're gonna make it happen. So convincing them otherwise is in all of our best interests because a battle like that with a nuclear power, particularly with the U.S. likely to enter the conflict, could be devastating, and just a matter of creating content that showcases what the outcome might be for Taiwan, for China, for the U.S. might pull people back from the precipice and begin helping us look for alternative ways to accomplish similar goals without this extreme loss of life and damage. So, in any case, it's an interesting thing to fund on the entertainment side that actually could have an impact on people's lives and longevity.
I think you just invented a new product category, preemptive, predictive digital twin investing.
Preemptive predictive analytics, yeah.
Yeah.
For simulation.
It's going to involve creatives and practicals, but not all bad actors are going to be deterred by seeing the consequences.
No,
but if you could deter some of them, it's worth it. If you could deter,
it's worth it. Yeah, that's absolutely worth it. And maybe you convince the population of that country to act, then remove the bad actor before they do harm. Because I imagine there are an awful lot of Russians right now that wish that Putin had not been reelected and put into a position of power. Certainly, the hundreds of thousands of dead Russians, if they could vote, would voice a different concern. So that's kind of it. And that would be my, since we're out of time, those are my closing comments as we move around the circle.
Thank you. Mr. Dan, what's your closing comments?
Well, yeah, I'm really kind of excited about this idea of creatives and prediction markets and digital twin experts all coming together to form a predictive, what did you call it? Predictive investment analytics, something like that. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting notion to explore. Maybe we can do a show on it, or but that would be
on preemptive predictive analytics.
Yeah, Google it. So yeah, we are running short on time, so I'll just second what everyone else has been saying, especially Rob's new idea. So, Rob, you get the credit. Go ahead, someone else.
Mr. David, what's your closing comments?
Sharif, you always
Mr.
come
David,
up with
what's
great
your closing comments?
Sharif, you always come up with great topics, and today's another example. Impact investments have their place in all the different types, from corporate, from government, from NGOs to individual investments. And each of them have the ability to create an impact at various scales. I love the term that we just came up with on that one, and I'm ready to see how many new businesses start up with that as a business goal after your comment, Rob. So thank you for helping the entrepreneur world here. The impact investments are particularly important in places where there are not funds readily available. So disproportionately, some of the impact investment goes to developing nations to help them as well. And we've seen that particularly from NGOs. If you look at the last COP meeting, the majority of their funding directions were impact investments for sustainability in the developing world. So you see that as well. But this is a topic that needs to be addressed, needs to be considered. And again, if you look at the industries where the majority of the impact investment is occurring in healthcare, you see it happening in agriculture. You see it happening in sustainability. Those are the important places where you can begin to make a difference. And remember, you need to align what you're doing to what the people are doing, to what the culture and sustainability doing, and what are the societal benefits too on this. So, Sharif, that's my concluding remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an excellent session. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. I request our speaker, please share our content. Thank you. Thank you for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Take care.
Thank you.